p.m. Let me call to order the Merrimack Planning Board meeting for Tuesday, October 18th, 2016. Let me begin by appointing both Nelson and Jeff as voting members since they're alternates. To vote with us tonight, let me remind everyone who's going to address the board to remember to sign in on the clipboard that's on the table. Make sure the microphones are turned on and that you speak clearly into them. There's always a lot of folks watching at home, and they won't hear you at all if you don't follow those instructions with the microphone. With that brings us to the first item on our second item on our agenda, which is Planning and Zoning Administrator's Report. Robert, is there any report for us today?
I have nothing.
Any questions by members of the board for the staff? Seeing none, that brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which is Ryan Saratori of Brown Bear Guns, LLC as the applicant and Michael McBrain as the owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of a home occupation to permit a gunsmithing business. The parcel is located at 20 Burt Street in the R Residential and Aquifer Conservation District, Tax Map 5C, Lot 103. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Nothing outside of what's in the memo. Nope.
Is the applicant here? Yes. Please come forward. We've all got no. Have a seat. Sign in. Get comfortable. We'll talk with you a little bit. Okay, we've all had a little bit of an opportunity to review the materials that you submitted to the Community Development Department, your application, and some of the photographs and things. But give us an introduction to your project and what you plan to do, and tell us about hours and employees and all of those kinds of things, so we know what you've got proposed.
Yes, sir. First, I'd like to actually.
I don't think your microphone's on. Touch.
There you go.
There
Thank you.
you go.
First, actually, to take a second and thank the ladies and gentlemen of the planning board for actually having a chance to hear this, and also all of my butters for being able to come out and voice their concerns, because obviously it's really important that, being that it's in their neighborhood, they are comfortable with it happening. Basically,
Before you begin and go any further, just for the record, for the folks at home, say your name and where
Ryan
you live.
N. Saratori.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I don't plan on selling firearms, and I'm assuming I understand that that's a concern with people. All I plan on doing is smith work, maintenance, cleaning, repairs, things like that. It's like a mechanic for a car. There's certain policies that I have in order to make sure that it's done as safely as possible. There's no live ammunition in any of the firearms. It's all just metal or plastic dummy rounds to make sure that they function properly. And for the most part, there's not even those in them. It is only if the job that I'm doing deems that there needs to be a function check done. Other than that, it's just, for all intents and purposes, metal and wood sitting on a bench. It's as safe as I can possibly make it. And I understand that there are concerns, obviously for my abutters, that it could be dangerous, this, that, the other, and all sorts of different things. But without any ammunition being in the firearm, it's just metal and wood at that point.
How many customers do you think that you'll see in a day or
maybe
week?
One a week? I don't plan on doing a lot of business. Realistically, it was just more so to be able to do a little bit on the side, more so for friends, without having to, unfortunately, have any inconveniences through federal agencies. The ATF, who I've applied for an FFL, a federal firearms license. They were the ones that actually told me that I needed to get an approval through the planning board in the town. And I'm not trying to get rich. I'm not trying to make $1 million and have 100 customers. I'm just trying to be able to do small work for friends and side projects and things like that, and do it the right way.
Thank you for mentioning the federal firearms license. I saw it mentioned in one of the emails, I think, from your landlord. So tell me about that. Where you at in that process?
That has pretty much, I've been working with an agent through the ATF. His name's Matthew Gagney. He actually he wanted me to extend to the board that he's available for any questioning. If you guys have any additional questioning, I can email him and get back to you, obviously. He has pretty much told me that everything has been approved through them. As far as background checks, this, that, and the other. I actually also went through the local police department, Merrimack Police Department, and I submitted my application through them, which I didn't have to. But but I wanted them to run a background check so they would be more comfortable, and subsequently, hopefully, it would run down the line. But as far as the ATF is involved, everything's gone through to basically the last step, where I'm waiting on the planning board.
So you need us to get to
approval.
the final step?
Yes, sir.
So it's not unusual when we've heard these applications in the past, and there's been 4 or 5 others in town for gunsmithing and selling and things, that we, as one of our conditions of approval, require that you obtain that FFL and that that doesn't fall between the cracks and
Yes, sir.
fall by the wayside. Obtain and maintain that. You wouldn't have any problem with that being
Absolutely
a condition?
not. From my understanding, and I've been talking back and forth with Matthew Gagney a lot, he said that it's gone all the way down to the licensing department. And so as soon as I get the approval through the town board, he basically calls and gets the nod from y'all, and then within 2 weeks, the license will be approved, and we can go
Have
on
they
from there.
inspected your
Yes, sir.
place? When did they do that?
I believe about around a month ago, he actually came out and he did a physical inspection of the property, security, this, that, and the other.
What kinds of things did they look at when they're doing the inspection?
To make sure that the room is lockable, that the dwelling is capable of having certain things like safe storage of certain items and things like that.
We have, in the past, required applicants to store their guns in a manner that's a little bit upgraded from what the ATF requires, and that
Yes,
is a
sir.
safe instead of a cabinet.
Yes, sir.
If we have that requirement that all the firearms are kept in a gun safe when they're not being worked on, is that something that you can comply with?
Absolutely. I've been planning on purchasing a safe specifically for clients' firearms, just to kind of make everything a little bit more segregated and safer in general.
Okay. Do you have an alarm system on the home?
No, sir.
Did the ATF suggest that you needed one?
No, sir.
I know that in the past we've talked with applicants about alarms, but I don't know if we've maintained that you had to have one or that it was advisable. What do you guys remember from that?
The last application that Tim gave me information about back in 2014, that was one of the conditions of approval, that they provide documentation of proof that they will utilize an appropriate security or alarm system. So it has been done.
Being that you're renting space from someone else, that may be a more difficult one for you to comply with. But there are some services out there that do provide alarms for not a great deal of money with some of the installations and things, if that's the will of the board to want to have that kind of a thing. I know that could be a more difficult one for you. You have thoughts on an alarm system?
Respectfully, sir, I actually worked for an alarm company for a little bit. I was very proudly a member of a veteran of the 82nd Airborne Division in the United States Army. And shortly after getting out, I worked for an alarm company. And alarms fail. Unfortunately, they do. And I have 2 wonderful dogs that I know personally won't. They'll wake me up, for lack of a better term. And so I
don't necessarily disagree with you, and I think that in some of the other applications that we've had opportunity, or at least I have, to go research sort of the notion of whether folks doing business like what you're proposing or operating a gun shop frequently have any problem with crime, and really isn't a lot of evidence that there is a problem with crime. But nevertheless, you got a whole room full of people who are looking for a comfort level.
Yes, sir.
And having an alarm system that could tell the world that something's gone wrong, especially when you're going to do something kind of part-time, so maybe during the day you have a regular job and there's nobody in the home, and somebody that was trying to break in and work on your safe could have a long time to be able to do it. Having an alarm system, although they do fail, it is at least one more level of protection.
Yes,
I think
sir.
that's really what I was getting at.
I understand, sir.
I didn't mean to cut you off if you had more that you wanted to say
no,
on
that was pretty much it.
the notion of an alarm. No employees,
No, sir.
just you. Were you trained to be a gunsmith, or is that from the Army? Or
Well, actually, when I was in the service, the last 3 months that I was in, I was the unit armor. So I got extensive training on maintenance and storage of firearms, also keeping books and cataloging to make sure that everything was organized. So as far as that,
do you maintain your own firearms at home,
yes, sir.
separate from these?
Yes, sir. They actually have to be kept in a separate room, according to the ATF. Otherwise, they have to be tagged as personal firearms.
Okay. How do you keep your own personal firearms?
They're normally stored with unloaded, separate from them.
Appreciate that. Does anyone else have
Do
comments?
you
or
have any,
questions?
do they have gun? Do you have a lock on the trigger on those, on your own guns? I'm talking about.
No, sir.
I thought that was supposed to be a good idea. I mean, I'm not into guns. I mean, I served in the military myself, but not this military, but the other side. But we were not allowed to take them out of the armory unless we'd got gun locks on them.
Yeah.
You don't seem to think a gun lock's a good idea.
Well, I don't necessarily think
Trigger
it's-
lock, I think,
I
is
don't necessarily think that it's not a good idea, sir. I personally, actually, according to the ATF, there's a law that's the Child Handgun Safety Act, and so in the event that you were to sell, and again, I'm not selling firearms, but if you were to sell a handgun to somebody, not long gun, specifically a handgun, they're required by law to be sold with a trigger lock
That's what
specifically
I
for that
thought,
reason. So I have them, sir. I do. It's not that I don't have them. There's just
You just don't put them on.
No, but for personal use, I mean, if he wasn't here before us, he can store his guns any way that he chooses, loaded or not. So, Lynn.
Do you live in this house?
yes, ma'am.
Who lives upstairs?
My in-laws, ma'am, Michael and Lisa McBrain.
And you're leasing the lower level from them?
Yes, ma'am.
So are we dealing with a two-family situation here?
No, actually, as you have noted in the memo, the zoning definition for the word for family is actually 5 unrelated persons or less. So everything that's going on in the house is perfectly legit. It's
So the
not a
fact that
two-family.
it's related, we're okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's still fine.
All right, thank you.
And even there's some more room even beyond what he's doing.
I
with
just-
some
yep.
unrelated- No, but good call. Jeff, you had a comment or question?
How do you plan to advertise your business?
I actually don't plan on having any signage. I
Well,
don't
know
want
outside you having it, but any website or
well-
how do people find out that you have this capability?
Mostly, I'd like to try to do it by word of mouth. Like I said, I'm not trying to make $1 million. I'm not trying to have this huge, elaborate thing. I just want to do work for friends and friends of friends and make everybody kind of happy.
Are you in a gun club where there would be friends that are part of your gun club or a hunting club that you would?
I plan on joining a fish and rod club, sir. I normally go to a local range in Manchester.
Oh, okay.
I do have business cards that I haven't really started to give out yet, just because I need to get
You're
the
not there
license
yet?
and everything. Yeah, but I do plan on starting to network a little bit. But I'm not I'm not trying to make this a big thing.
Okay.
I kind of want to stay small to where it's just something I can do for fun.
If you have to test a firearm to make sure it works, how do you do that?
I go to a range, sir.
You go to a range?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I don't
okay.
do anything in the house.
Yeah.
If there's, as a policy, I don't put live ammunition in any firearm.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the one surefire way I can make sure that nothing is going to happen. And so that's something that I've always just practiced. They actually make, they're called snap caps or dummy rounds, and it's basically a plastic or a metal mold of the same size of the bullet that the firearm would take, so that you can test that the firearm chambers around and ejects around properly, but they're just
They're
hollow
dummies,
metal or
yeah,
plastic.
yeah, okay. Any resurfacing as part of your maintenance?
Cerakoting is something that I want to try to get into, which is it's essentially powder coating, but you don't have to electrify the material.
Okay. That actually gets into chemicals that you might have.
Yes.
Any idea of the volume? It's
No.
very small.
Very, very small. If
Okay.
anything, it's a quart at the most.
Yeah, okay, all right.
One of
That's
the
all I
things the
have.
staff mentioned in their memo is the situation with your parking is a little close to the roadway, or maybe there's limited parking. Tell me a little bit about what that situation's about.
We actually plan on getting that whole section of where that dirt strip is actually paved off. And not necessarily sure as to how quickly they would be able to get that done. But we do plan on paving that section off.
Okay. How well are the cars able to get well clear of the street or well clear of where a snowplow might plow up a big bank of snow or something
Oh,
like
extremely. It's probably close to 30 feet from the road to the fence. And so as long as they pulled up close enough to the fence, that's, a car is 16 feet long, almost twice the distance.
that? You guys are parking there now as your residents, right?
Yes, sir.
How many cars are usually parked there?
4?
Okay. 4 on that non-paved area? Or
Oh,
4
no,
on
no,
the total?
just 3 on the non-paved area.
Okay. Comments or questions?
I think you've taken care of everything I had in mind. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Hours of operation, you put 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I know that our application kind of falls down on the job and doesn't ask you what days we're talking about here, but
I followed that up with the Agent Gagny, and that actually he recommended that I change it to 5 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, just because it's easier. That way the ATF, that way they can guarantee that I will be home if they need to do, because the ATF will do at minimum 1 inspection a year.
during
At
your business
random.
hours.
During business hours at
if
random.
You say 9 to 5 and you're not there.
Yeah.
So 5 to 7 is when you actually intend to be operational,
Yes,
and
sir.
a customer could come or go.
Yes, sir.
So they wouldn't be if I wanted to drop off at noon or something like that. There's
Absolutely not. I'd be at work.
Monday through Friday or Saturday and Sunday too, or
Just Monday through Friday.
okay,
I don't want to inconvenience the neighbors on the weekend.
understood. Make sure there may be some other things that I haven't thought of that I want to ask you questions about as we go through this, but since I'm kind of searching for one of those right now, let's pause for a second and see if there are any abutters or interested citizens who
Yes,
wish
sir.
to weigh in. Let me ask you to let them have the table if they want to come up, so you'll get a chance to come and speak afterwards.
Yes, sir.
So with that, are there any abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in on the application? Okay. We did receive one written correspondence, which I will read into the record.
You want to come up, John?
I'm sorry, did I miss somebody? Okay, I don't want to skip anybody. We're not going to cut you off. We'll have plenty of time for everybody to do it. This is a letter dated October 11th, 2016. The letterhead is from Anthony DuPont and Teresa DuPont, 19 Burt Street, which I would guess is across the street. Dear Planning Board members, I'm writing today in response to the notification we received with regard to Mr. Saratori's request at the town of Merrimack to permit a gunsmithing business out of his current residence located at 20 Burt Street. I live across the street from Mr. Saratori at 19 Burt Street. I've lived here for the last 16 years. I'm not able to attend the meeting scheduled for Tuesday, October 18th, so I'm hoping to express my concerns in this letter. I do not think having this sort of business taking place out of our personal residence is a good idea for many reasons. First, the neighborhood is full of families. Children ride their bikes, scooters, skateboards, etc., up and down the roads in the neighborhood all the time, along with people walking their dogs. The bus stop for children, K through 12, is right in front of Mr. Saratori's residence at 20 Burt Street. The children would be subject to seeing various people coming and going with guns, which could be very alarming for children. Second, the traffic with having customers coming and going would be way too much for the small neighborhood. As stated above, there are many children in the neighborhood, and the cars already drive way too fast down the roads here. More traffic coming and going would be too much, and I would be scared of an accident with one of our children or pets. Third, Mr. Saratori has only lived at 20 Burt Street for approximately 6 months, so I'm not sure he is fully aware of how quiet and family-oriented the neighborhood is. Lastly, I would like to state that I am all for local small businesses, but this sort of business is in a residential neighborhood is just wrong. I would much rather see this business in one of the many empty commercial sites in town. Thank you for taking the time to read this letter, and please take into account my concerns and do not approve this permit. Sincerely, Teresa DuPont. So that is in the file. I assume that the department got one as well, since that's how it got distributed to us. Okay, with that, any other abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in and offer the board any information before we
Good evening.
take your time to sit down and sign in on the clipboard, and then introduce yourself. Then we're ready to hear what you have in mind.
Good evening. My name's Scott Peabody, resident of 4 Burt Street. I've been a resident there for the past 31 years. And I would just really like to reiterate what Teresa DuPont, the letter you just read from Teresa. I certainly support anyone wanting to start a small business. I appreciate that. Small business is really the kind of the backbone of what drives this country. However, having said that, I really don't think having a gunsmithing business of any type in the neighborhood that we have is a good idea. It's just that the houses are very close together. There are numerous properties. Having guns in that house, even though it's, I mean, Mr. Serratori, it sounds like he's done a very good job of applying for the application. Sounds like he knows his business. I just don't think it's a good idea to have guns stored in a residential property with the children, with the families. I believe that makes for a target for potential theft and break-in, and that's a big concern of mine as well. And I don't know this for a fact, but it could potentially affect property values down the road. And again, having lived in that area for a long period of time, that's a concern of mine as well. So having said that, that's really all I want to say, and I'm opposed to approving this permit.
Thank you, Mr. Peabody. Are there any questions for Mr. Peabody? I appreciate your testimony. Thank you for coming forward. Yeah, don't forget those.
I can't take mine off because I won't see anything.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Actually, I can't see that well with them either. It's an endorsement from my eye doctor, huh?
My name is Richard Fredette. I live at 6 Little John Court, so I'm right around the corner from Mr. Sartori. I also am against seeing the business come into the neighborhood. And it's not just for the safety of the thing. I do agree with that. And the property values, I understand that. But I'm also, listening to the story. We're talking about starting a business and it's just on the side, but that's what it's starting at. Doesn't mean that's what it's going to be. Business could increase, more traffic than what Mr. Sartori is actually planning right now. And again, the houses are very close. There's not a lot of parking on that lot. I mean, I walk by it every day when we go for our walks. It's a very quiet neighborhood. And I just hate to see a business come into the residential area. Again, I'd like to see it. I'd like him to start a business, but not necessarily in the residential area. I'd like to see it outside the residential.
You mean any business or this business?
Any business in the residential area.
I realize that we do that all over town.
I do understand there's some businesses that aren't as critical. This one is a little more, we're talking about guns. We're not
Well, that's
talking
why I
about,
asked you whether it was this business.
No, there's some people that have businesses, they work out of their homes for offices and stuff. I have friends that do that. But, this is a different level of business to me. There's a safety factor as well. And for that, I'm against it as well.
Okay. I didn't mean to cut you off if you were in the middle of a longer thought.
No.
I apologize if I seem to do that. Any questions for Mr. Fredette?
The only thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would just like to try and point out, and I'm not saying yea or nay, that there have been 2 other businesses which started in homes doing something like what Mr. Sartori is doing, which are now relatively good-sized gun businesses in the town of Merrimack. There's the one that's on the right opposite the Bedford Road turn, and then the other one on DW Highway, fairly near the vet centre. Now, both those businesses did start almost like Mr. Sartori in a very small way, and when they did prove successful, and that's obviously down to the ability of the individuals, they mushroomed and they moved out of the homes, and they were making sufficient funds to generate, to move into a decent, or if I shouldn't say decent, that's the wrong word.
Commercial space.
A commercial facility. Thank you. Appropriate commercial facility.
But I'm sure people were concerned at that time, the same as we're concerned over
I can
here as
assure
far
you
as the safety.
This isn't the first time
And
we've heard
this
No,
is
they
not
aren't
somebody who's
actually.
lived in the area for 5 or 10 or 15 years. It's somebody who's just moved in, and he's renting space in the area. It's not, he owns in the area.
No, I understand,
We
but-
all own property in the area, so that's why I think the concern is, or at least in my case, my
I
concern.
understand. I'm not arguing the points that you've raised because they're obviously heartfelt and they're important. I think that they're the kinds of concerns that the ATF and the police department takes a look at when they consider and approve whether they think it's going to be a safe and properly run business as well. So we do acknowledge that there's some weight to be placed on the approval of the ATF and the police department. Not with this application, but with one of the previous ones, I had a chance to kind of poke around to see outside of Merrimack, are these businesses around the new state, around the country, and actually more than half of the federal firearms licensed businesses in the country are run out of people's homes. They're literally everywhere. Now, are the concerns that you have realized in some of those? Well, I wouldn't know. I know that we haven't heard that those concerns have been realized in some of the ones here in town. But I get the concerns that you have. I appreciate you sharing them with us.
Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Okay.
Hello. My name is Tammy Call, and I am at 8 Little John Court. And I just had a question. If this was approved, what is the ability, or how could we kind of make sure that it didn't get out of hand? That he's saying it's starting small.
No, that's an
but
important question.
Could
Yeah.
we at one point say, wait a minute, this is too many people? He said it's going to start small, but how do we know how big it's going to get?
That is a very important question, and the same kind of criteria apply to this business as any others. When they come to the planning board and they say that my hours are going to be X, or the number of parking spaces I'm going to use are going to be Y, or the square foot that I use is going to be a certain thing, or I'm not going to sell guns. If those things change, he's got an obligation to come back to the planning board to ask for an amended approval. Now, we don't sit over his shoulder
Right.
trying to make sure that nothing has ever happened, but we do very frequently get reports to the department, people asking for the planning and zoning administrator to take a look into a situation, whether it's somebody that's got a sign that they weren't supposed to have, or a lawnmower business they weren't supposed to have, or whatever. And Robert and his department do have to go
So they
and
do
figure
check
those
and-
things out.
And if a neighbor were to say, I don't, I see what's going on now, could they come and then try to have another meeting or some kind of, I mean, at that point, the
Sure,
business
sure.
has already started, and it's probably
Yeah.
difficult at that point to say, okay, you have to stop, or?
No, it isn't
No, it's
really.
not, okay.
That what happens is it's reported to the department. You say, I think that so and so isn't living up with the conditions of their approval, whatever that is, whether it's a gas station or this business. And Robert and his department go and take a look at it, and they write him a letter, and they say, we think that you're encroaching on the boundary line where you said that you weren't going to, and you have 7 parking spaces where you said you were going to have 11. Fix it, or stop doing what you're doing, or whatever. And the applicant then could come forward and say, I disagree with you, I don't think that I've broken the rules, and there's a process for that to be resolved. Or the applicant can come forward and say, yeah, my business did change, I want to have more parking spaces, what do I do?
So there has to
And
be
they-
another meeting then, or with
Then
the
then you
neighbors
come
and-
back here. So there's public processes, and there's also administrative processes, and there's a lot of different ways that can come forward. But yes, there are ways to do that. Now, does that mean that the first time he has 2 customers a day when he said he'd probably only have 1, that anybody would even notice that, or whether anybody would be able to go and verify that even if it was reported to the department? No, but if there's businesses, cars coming all day long, and somebody could pass
Right.
by it and notice that, then yeah, that's something that would be potentially able to be investigated and resolved.
It's
It
a-
happens all the time.
It's a simple call from anyone
Okay.
to the department to say, I think there's something going on that needs to be looked at, and the department goes and looks at it. So it can be done by anybody.
Okay. And my other concern was that since he is renting, he doesn't have the same, we've lived there for many years, a lot of us, and so it's more of an investment in our, we have kids and this and that, and since he's renting, I don't think that feeling is probably quite the same as.
It may not be, although I guess is renting from relatives.
That's-
One of the things that may lend you a little bit of, well, I'm not sure, it's probably a mixed bag. Federal firearms licenses are site-specific. So if he moves, he loses his FFL, and he has to go through this process all over again. So he'd probably be pretty tightly tied to this site once you get that. Of course, you don't want him to have the FFL at all, so I get that. That's not necessarily a good bit of this, but in terms of him being sort of transient, this is probably more of a
That's true.
root system than anything else.
And could I just amplify what you've just said, Mr. Chairman? Not only if he moves, does the license evaporate and he has to go again. Even the house cannot the license can't be transferred to the
Okay.
house. It's purely
Yeah, this
goes
doesn't
to
stay
the
with
one
anybody else.
individual. So if he moves, the whole thing's gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't come and sell his business to the next guy.
Right, so
or,
it's not like it can be just transferred or anything.
No.
Okay.
No, it doesn't run with the property so that somebody could buy it 5 years from now and say, oh, look what this approval was back from 2016.
Thank you.
Look at me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris McFarland. I live at 12 Friar Tuck Court, which is pretty much the intersection of Burt and Friar Tuck. I moved there in 2012, and I would just like to say that I'm for Ryan doing this business, and I know there's a lot of safety concerns, but I think he said it best when he started off. It's much like a mechanic working on his car. He's not going to be selling guns. He's just going to be working on them. Even cleaning them for other people. There won't be any working on them. He'll simply be cleaning them. And I know the letter you wrote, the woman across the street, DuPont, I believe was the last name.
Correct.
I think so. So she was saying that, yeah, and there are a lot of kids. I mean, I have kids everywhere running all around all the time, and she seemed to voice the opinion that seeing firearms being transferred in and out was, you know, I don't remember the word she used, but not a good thing. And responsible firearm owners aren't the ones that we need to be concerned about. You know, if I was going to go to his business, I wouldn't walk down the street with my rifle or handgun in my pocket or, you know, leave it out in my car or drive it. It would be in a case. And most responsible firearms people will do that. So I don't really see it as being, you know, a safety issue because responsible people are going to do the responsible thing. Now, as far as the theft, he's already stated that he plans on getting a gun safe, and I understand the concern is people breaking in when he's not home because the business might be advertised and they see it as a target to go get guns. But, you know, Merrimack's pretty, I mean, it's a big town, but it's not full of, I don't think it's, I mean, I've only been here since 2012, but I don't see it being high in crime, and I don't see people saying, oh, here's a business, let's break into his house and take the one gun he might have from the customer that just dropped it off the other night. It just seems, it doesn't seem very realistic to me. That's pretty much all I have to say. I'd say I'm fine with it. I don't really have any concerns. I don't see it as a safety issue. And I think if it's something that he wants to do to mainly be a hobby, he stated that he doesn't want to do it to get rich, then I don't really see it growing into this big business with people coming in and out all the time.
Yeah. I don't know what to say about growth. I mean, people's businesses, if they grow and they can become successful, people's plans change.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
nobody turns away customers if they think that that's where their business is going to come from. But what we said before is true, that he's committed to what the size and scope that he's provided to us today, and if it changes, it's got to come back before us. And
Right.
frankly, although it's not a legal requirement, at some level when businesses grow big enough, it makes more sense to put them in commercial space when you can afford to do so, and that's the track record that we've seen in town.
Yeah.
So
All right. Thank you.
thank you for that. Please come forward. We'll get to everybody. You don't have to rush. Take turns.
Hi, my name is Chrysanthi Dikos, and I live across the street, 21 Bird Street. I lived there for 31 years. I admire young people that they try to open their business. Small business owner myself, but I believe business should be in commercial zone, not in a residential zone. I own a restaurant. If I come in front of you and I says, I'll turn my garage to a restaurant, would you allow it? Or like he said that it's only, it's like you fixing a car. If tomorrow he wants to have a garage next door, are we going to allow that? Why business should not stay in business zone and let the residential zone to be residential? We have so many kids, and the bus stops exactly on the corner of 20 Bird Street. And all the kids, all the buses, elementary and high school, they go through there. every morning, every noontime. And the other thing, it's my concern, it's our street is, I believe, it's one of the the only street in Merrimack we have no city lights. It's very dark. And if they say they're going to have the business from 5 to 7, and if he has one customer or two customers, they stay until 8, 9 o'clock, what he's going to say, I'm closing the business 7 because it's not lights outside? And even 7 o'clock, we're in the time, it's nighttime. I'm very concerned who's going to come and who's going to go. They only fit 3 cars in their parking. And the customers were going to be on the street or in my street.
I understand. I can let you know my street doesn't have any lights on it. I wish it did.
I wish they did too, because we just got a letter that our tax is going up, but I don't see lights in our street.
They got this fancy LED lights that don't burn up all the electricity.
What's up with this?
You raised a great point about the kinds of businesses and keeping businesses in a commercial zone versus keeping them in a residential zone. Certain kinds of businesses are allowed in residential zones, first by statute and then by our own local ordinances. Garages, and I know that he's mentioned a garage and used as an example. He can't fix cars in his house. You couldn't get a home occupation permit.
So then why he can fix guns?
Because they're not out in the yard, and they don't leak oil in the yard and do all of that kind of stuff, have broken
But still
cars.
people going to be in the yard coming in and out.
Sure.
And like I mentioned it, if I want to have my business restaurant, that's what I have, restaurant business, and I can turn my garage to a restaurant, would you allow me? Because cars going to come in and out.
That's another one of the kind of businesses that you can't do in a residential. You can do professional, personal service type businesses. So there's a lot of businesses around the town that do hairdressing and dog grooming and all of the professions, the lawyers and accountants and whatever. Do home occupation business. We had an engineering business over a garage, which was kind of a big operation. A lot of construction companies are working out of their home as well. So it's kind of a well-developed bit of a legal framework to allow these kinds of things when it's personal services. And well-defined with in his kind of business, at least for the last, I don't know, as long as they've come before the town, have always been positioned in that category from a decision that goes back, I think, into the 80s, where it was an administrative decision to see that these fit into them.
I just think that business should be in commercial zones and residents should be staying in residential zones. That's all.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wish to offer some testimony?
I'm Don Monroe. I live at 12 Burt Street. Been there, 30 years or more here. It's a small neighborhood. It's always been that way. I could say that I don't really like the idea of this type of business being in this type of neighborhood. I admit I'm not a gun owner. Okay, and I have no complaints about anybody that wants to own a gun, or for that matter. But I do not want an idea of a gun business. Whatever they're doing, they're storing other people's guns, or just in our neighborhood. I just don't want it in our neighborhood. I just don't feel a gun business in a neighborhood is a good idea. And that's pretty much what I see it. I mean, I've seen other businesses, but I don't really want a gun business in our neighborhood. That's all I can say. So
you don't have to say, you don't apologize for that being all you want to say. It's very, very, very sincere, very straight to the point, and exactly what you feel. And sometimes we get a lot of testimony from folks, not in this application, but in others, where they talk about, how many cars and we need a stop sign and all those things. But
the safes and the things, but I just
coming forward and just saying I don't like it.
I don't like it.
Perfectly good, honest testimony. It's well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Please come forward.
Hi, my name's Lisa McBrain. I live at 20 Burt. I just wanted to say that I understand everybody's concerns, and I myself never handled a gun in my life. I never liked guns, anything to do with them. Never felt the need for them. However, since Ryan has come into our life, I have come to realize that he is probably one of the safest gun handlers ever. I've watched him. He has explained things to me straightforward, addressed every concern that I ever had about a weapon being in the house. And I myself have gone from a person that dislikes them to even asking the kids, you guys, you know, your weapons are, you know what I mean? You have them with you. Like, I've found myself in situations where I've felt nervous and asked them if they were carrying, like being in a movie theater, because we all know what happens nowadays, you know, and I've looked at them as more of a level of protection now. Having said that, we have just moved into 20 Burt. This is a place, this is our first home, and we did not make this decision irrationally. There's a reason why we chose this neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood. It's full of loving families, and you can see the children. They have a great, they're always outside playing. I'd be more concerned about the cars speeding down the road that are always, they're always speeding down the road. People taking corners without stopping. You know what I mean? I think I would be more concerned about that with my child than somebody who is in the military who is very careful with their weapons. That's all I just wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. McBrain, for your testimony and support. I think that the challenge that the community kind of faces, I can sort of convey this from a personal viewpoint. I grew up on a farm in Georgia, and there were guns, and we hunted, and we had them, and we went and shot bottles off the fence posts and all sorts of things. My wife didn't. And doesn't like them, doesn't want them around, and there's nothing I could say or do or demonstrate or show or take her to the range or whatever that would change her view of that. And so you got to have peace in the house. There's no guns in my house. And I'm not terribly troubled by that development either, but for some of the neighbors, it doesn't really matter how many other people have had different experiences or who don't share their view.
I understand.
Their concerns are heartfelt and
Absolutely.
genuine and real and important.
Absolutely.
So
I just
I don't
want
know
to
how
speak on his behalf because, like I said, I myself wanted nothing to do with them whatsoever until he proved to me how safe he was. And I know that in everybody's mind, there's always that first time, blah, 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 whatever. I get it. I understand people's concerns, and I'm glad that people are coming out expressing. This is a neighborhood that we sought out. We are happy. There isn't a day that goes by that I sit there and go, I love this neighborhood. I love this town. You know what I mean? I haven't met all my neighbors yet. I've met a few of them here and there. But, you know, I'm more than happy to become part of the neighborhood. But I just want to say my piece.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward.
Hi, my name is Mary Hinault. I live at 8 Burt Street. Been there for 31 years. And I have to say, Mr. Best, I agree with your wife. I want nothing to do with the guns. I'm not opposed to Ryan having guns and all of that out of his own. But as far as having guns in a residential area with no lights and a very, very quiet community, Merrimack is a great town, but bad things happen in good towns. And we know that bad people come into neighborhoods looking for things. And he's not a big businessman or anything, but eventually, hopefully, if his business succeeds, he will be known. And guns have, just the reputation of drawing some bad people around to him sometimes. But even given that, it's a residential area, lots of little kids, no lighting. will he be required to have some kind of alarm system on his home? Is that a requirement from the town? Would it be?
It's been our practice in the past to impose that, and we'll see how the will of the board is if we get to the point of making a final decision whether the board wants to impose that. I'd be in favor of it.
All right, and also if he is, fixing guns and doing things with them, the plastic bullets or the shells that he's using, are they going to make a noise? Are they going to sound like gunfire, or are they quiet? How?
No, they don't fire at all. It's just something that's the same size and shape as a bullet that you can put in the gun to see that the gun loads the bullet into the chamber and ejects the bullet when it's done and all of that, but they don't do anything. They're just metal or plastic objects that are shaped like a bullet. So they don't, and he indicated that any of his testing would be done at a firing range.
All right. My father was a police officer, so I've grown up with a gun in our home always. My fear is not having the gun there, it's having ammunition and having other things, which he states he's not going to have. Again, how many car allotments are you going to allow him to have for parking? Is it going to be more than one or two places? Could this business expand exponentially without him, seeing it happen? Can this happen, or would there be some kind of containment on it?
As I mentioned before when the similar question came up, there isn't going to be a town official that's looking over his shoulder to say, oh, you had 2 cars today. But if the neighbors or any of the individuals who are troubled by it call the department and say, hey, I think he's gone beyond the scope of what he said or what he was approved to do, then the town will investigate it and do something about it. It doesn't mean that he'll, could be given the death penalty, so to speak, for having 3 customers, but he will have to come and apply for a different kind of approval, and maybe the approval says that you don't have enough parking for 3 customers at a time. You got to limit your business or make it smaller or live within your constraints and those sorts of things. Not that I think this board would act any different if he said that he was going to have, 2 or 3 customers a day as opposed to 1 every day or 2. It's just not that much traffic.
All right.
I mean, if he was having 3 guests come that were all heading out on a hunting trip with their guns in their cars, they could come and park in his yard right now.
Right, I understand that. Would there be any requirement for lighting or anything where his business is going to be, at nighttime in the evening when it's dark, just for the purpose that neighbors who are nervous about this can kind of be soothed by seeing what's going in and out of the home and just having that comfortability?
It's an interesting question. I'm interested in the idea of there being enough light for people to come and go. I know that in our regulations, there's a couple of things that kind of weigh in both directions. Our regulations are pretty strict on regulating lighting and making sure that lighting doesn't spill over into the street or into the neighbor's yard because of all of the things that are affected with that. And so that's something that would have to be a part of that conversation. The other bit of that, though, is really kind of a reliance on the view of the police department and the ATF. And since neither of them have suggested to us that we should be alarmed at the idea of security, they obviously know tons more about security than I ever would. So that would be part of the conversation. But if this planning board put it in its conditions that there's got to be outdoor lighting, then you'd have to do outdoor lighting. I mean, we could.
Okay, and if all of this, if you approve of the permit and everything, how quickly would this be instated? When could he open his business?
As far as our concerns go, he would be able to open his business right away, but I think he's got some more business with the ATF to resolve to actually have his license in his hand before he'd be able to do any of that kind of thing. There's also conditions of approval that the department has suggested that we impose, like that he have insurance, and we think of an alarm and a safe, and all of those things have some practical times. But in terms of any waiting period or something like that, no, he could go right away. As long as he can meet all the conditions of approval and the requirements of the ATF, and he has that license in hand and all that. ATF licenses are a big deal. I mean, they don't give them away. There's a lot of scrutiny that goes into that. The ATF is not into seeing people with federal firearms licenses put guns out on the street. It's a big deal. It isn't foolproof, obviously. Nothing ever is, but it's not a small thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Who else wants to testify?
Good evening. My name's Sean Garrity. I live at 3 Friar Tuck Court, and I've been there for just about 31 years. When I moved to this neighborhood, you pretty much got a key to your house and a color chip that matched the property. It's a cookie-cutter development. A lot has been said here tonight. I'm glad that neighbors come out and support. I've met the family. It's nothing. I guess I came here. I've never come here in 31 years for anything, and this brought me out. And I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that neighbor. I guess I can't say anything that hasn't already been said by the other people. I would echo a lot of the concerns that other people have had. One of my concerns is it's probably from their house to my house is from corner to corner. So, that kind of concerns me because it's a very, very small area. Even though their house is on Burt Street, it's also on Friar Tuck. And where they park now pretty much goes from the driveway almost to the neighbor's lot. It's a residential neighborhood, and that's what I like about it. I can't really say much about parking right now because I had to bring my RV home, and my yard is my driveway's packed with, a giant fifth wheel, 2 cars, 2 motorcycles. So,
got a couple of toys.
It's a narrow street. Friar Tuck is narrower than Burt Street. In 30 years, there have been times when the plow comes down and it's literally one path down the middle of the road. The people who mentioned the speeders, probably the people who speed the worst are the ones with children. In the morning when I'm going to work and all the kids are out at the school bus, there's SUVs on both sides, and the soccer moms are all there, and you sometimes can't get through. But that's not really a concern since they're not going to be open in the morning, so I'm not worried about that so much. But people do come down the street very fast. They come down Burt Street. They turn onto that street very fast. I'm concerned that people are going to be parked in the street, and there's going to be a little more congestion, more opportunity for accidents. There isn't a lot of space on this road. I mean, it really is literally just almost 2 cars wide. So I don't agree with this. I think if it was a neighborhood where I had an acre between me and the business, I wouldn't care. But although I don't know the family, I met them, and I'm sure that they have plans for everything to be safe. But what about the people that are coming, that are having things done? People don't mean for guns to have accidents. So I guess, that kind of concerns me. He said that he planned, things would be as safe as possible. I think completely safe would have made me feel a little bit better. And I know it's mincing words. I'm a nurse. I've seen both sides.
I get your concerns, and even when I talk about the federal firearms license being a difficult thing, or alarm systems or safes and all that, one of the things I said is none of it's foolproof.
Right.
Things happen. Things happen without a person running a business. Frankly, happen more often without, in just a private home, somebody that's got guns and isn't as careful as they could be. So I get it. I appreciate you coming and sharing those concerns with us.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, real quick, might I just note, one of the concerns being parking in the street. As part of a home occupation permit, no parking is allowed off the property itself. So there would not be any cars allowed in the street.
Robert, how does that, people park next to my street when I have a bunch of people come over. How do you know whether that car is a business car or not a business car? The neighbors are looking for some definition to this, and how are we going to...
Yeah. That is a conundrum that is one of those things you just don't know. But, what they can do is, again, if they see lots of off-street parking during those time frames that he's allowed to operate, then report the concern to our department, and we can investigate it and make contact with him. Yeah. But it's one of those, it is admittedly one of those open-ended type things that we have in the regulation.
I mean, the normal traffic flow for a business like this is you bring in your thing and you say it needs to have this fixed or it needs to be cleaned, and here it is, and I'll see you in a couple of days when it's ready, and then you come back and pick it up. So people aren't browsing or coming or shopping or hanging out or doing those kinds of things. It really is kind of come and go. Even if there's somebody pulled off on the side of this road and parked on the street, the guy's probably gone again before before you do anything, even notice. So, thank you for that. Who else would like to testify for the board?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Laurie Monroe. I live at 12 Bird Street, and I've lived there for 30 years. And I do have the safety concerns like everybody else, but my question, I'm concerned because the numbering on that street is off a little bit. I'm 12 Bird Street. I know Mary's 8. There's no houses between us. The house across the street is 7. So I would like some sort of lighting or something. I know their house is well marked, but I've had pizza delivery guys come to my house not knowing what number. I wouldn't want someone showing up for a gun.
Good point. Good point. Okay, so some kind of, you said their house is well marked. Is a number on the mailbox or on the house?
They have a number on the house, but at night when it's dark, I'm not sure if it could be seen. And where, like I said, across the street is 7. There's no 10. It's marked weird.
Yeah, New Hampshire's actually pretty bad about that.
Yeah.
Years ago, I used to deliver pizzas for a living, and you cannot figure out what house is what.
Yeah,
all right, that's a good point. I think that we should make sure that the applicant addresses some way of making sure his house is identifiable by number for the people that are going to come.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else that you?
No, just on the record that I'm opposed to it as well for the safety concerns. It is a residential neighborhood, but that's all.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify before the board? Please come forward.
Hey, I'm Stephen Legase, and I live at number 25. And I agree with Sean. You know, I'm opposed. This is a small, quiet neighborhood. We have enough traffic as it is right now. People, you know, we're all in a rush. How many people are going to be in a rush, you know, drop off their thing to get it fixed, and then they're going to come back and pick it up again? This traffic's going to get bad, and you know, it's like any business. You always have that irate customer. What we're going to hear, people burning rubber down when they leave, or I have those concerns. And other than that just to have any business in town, I don't want to see a 7-Eleven right there. I don't want to see anything. People are going to park anywhere, just pull out and get out, walk across. People are going to be knocking on my door. I live at number 25. They're going to be like, "Where's number 20?" And I just feel like we're going to lose our quiet residential, non-commercial neighborhood. I think it's going to take away from the neighborhood a lot. And like it was mentioned earlier, if this was, you know, a big country area where the houses were far apart, no one would care, and it's more appropriate. But these houses are close together. It's a small neighborhood. Everyone that is dropping off a gun is probably packing heat as they're driving through. You know, they have more than one gun. A lot of people have dozens of guns, and that's just my concern. I'm opposed. I don't want to see a business there. Even worse for people, that kind of business, I think that should be in commercial zones. We've got a lot of empty storefronts in the commercial areas. I know people got to start somewhere, but you know, this is almost like an apartment building where this neighborhood is pretty tight.
Thank you, Stephen, for your testimony. Any questions for Stephen? No, thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. Does anyone else wish to testify for the board?
Can I just ask a question?
Of course you can. Come forward to the microphone, though. Can't hear you without the microphone.
You just read tell me the hours of this business if it was to go through. Is it just strictly in the evening?
Sure,
Or could
sure.
it be all day?
The applicants for any business have to tell us what their hours are. He's telling us here tonight his hours will be 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and those are his hours. And so he's saying that if he won't have any customers scheduled to come or coming earlier than that or later than that or on the weekends. If he has customers coming before that or after that and you want to complain about it, 4243531. But if he comes back to us and he said, hey, my business is going pretty well, I want to work 3 to 7 p.m., I don't know that the board would make a different decision based on a couple of extra hours. If he said I wanted to do it, till 10 p.m., I think the board would probably say, yeah, it's not going to really be a great opportunity to do that. But all of those individual things are something the applicant can propose. There aren't any rules or regulations that say that home occupations have to only exist during, a defined set of hours that are in our regulations. They have to exist during the hours that we consider and we ultimately decide whether or not to approve.
Okay.
Same thing with a commercial business too, by the way. If a restaurant tells me that they're going to be open till 10 p.m., then they can't be open till midnight.
I guess I was just concerned about maybe people picking things back up on weekends and stuff where it is a short amount of time. They come back on Saturday or Sunday during the day, and again, one car pulls in and one car pulls out. We have no idea if it's family, friends, or whatever. So I'm not going to be one to, call and say anything about it. I'm just, if there's more cars showing up that
Sure.
would be usual.
So, I can't tell you what to do as a neighbor. If it was me and I was making a judgment and I couldn't tell whether the guy that showed up on Saturday was a friend or relative or somebody getting a gun, I'd kind of decide whether the whole notion of somebody showing up on the Saturday really created any kind of problem. And if it looked like there was, added traffic or somebody waving a gun around or something like that, that's a different story. But if a car came and went on a Saturday and I couldn't really tell whether it was the cousin or the customer, well, who cares? But I can tell you that
I care because the weekends.
Well,
are,
because
again,
you don't want it there at all.
The more
But-
time during the weekends where I have my grandchildren. We've got lots of kids out and stuff. So yes, I wouldn't want to see that traffic like on Saturday and Sundays versus 5 to 7 at night is a different time frame where children aren't out playing. At least in the winter time and stuff. So it does make a difference to me.
No question, but if the traffic is the same as a guest or one stray car here or there, it's not like it created some traffic jam in the street. But I can tell you that in practice with these businesses that I've seen, more often than not, as he's mentioned, he wants to be a member of the Rod and Gun Club or he goes to the range and all of those kinds of things. And a lot of the customers bringing items and returning them to items actually occur there. You go and you test it and you shoot it a few times and you hand it back to them. And so there's always opportunities for them to go do that on a Saturday if they need to do some business. And more often than not, it's more convenient for their customer than coming into your neighborhood too. Meet you at the Rod and Gun Club. So although that isn't a requirement that we impose, in practical sense, that's available to the business owner and the customers, and they tend to make really good use of it because it's more convenient for them too.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Thanks. Does anybody else wish to testify or offer the board something to consider? Sure. Going once, going twice. All right. We'll close the public hearing and open up the floor. I'm sorry. Would the applicant like to come forward and respond to anything that you've heard from your neighbors?
Yes.
Please.
Sign back in, sir?
Don't have to sign in, but
I get that a lot of people are concerned with the children. And again, I'd like to kind of echo the fact that my business hours are between 5 and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Not anywhere near the time that the school bus is going, not any time near where there would be kids coming over necessarily to hang out with their grandparents per se on the weekends, things like that. I get that it's a quiet neighborhood. And when people say that, oh, well, he's just renting, yes, technically I'm renting. But as a family, we decided to buy a house. So because of the ATF, I needed to write up a lease agreement between Michael McBrain and myself as for their paperwork. But we're all a part of the neighborhood. lived in New York, South Carolina, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Georgia. I voted in the gubernatorial election this month. I've never felt more of a part of a community or a state in my life. I'm not from New Hampshire, but I could never live anywhere else. I love it here, and I wouldn't want to try and ever impact the community in a negative way when they've been so welcoming to us. So,
I appreciate your comments in that respect, and I know that you've heard what your neighbors have said. I don't know what the board's final disposition of your application will be after we discuss it in a little bit. We'll have to see how that plays out. But regardless of how that happens, if you do go forward and you have your business, you need to be sensitive to what your neighbors' concerns were.
Yes.
And recognize what it takes to be a good neighbor. It sounds like you got the right spirit for that kind of thing, and it may be like some of the other people that have done these businesses in the past, that your business grows a little bit, and when you have that opportunity to move out of the neighborhood, you'll give all your neighbors a good sigh of relief, assuming that it gets approved.
if I had the funds, sir, to be in a retail area, I absolutely would. I get that it's a small, quiet community, but I'm not trying to have a huge business. And in the event that it would grow to that point, I would be in a retail area as fast as possible.
In the meantime, assuming that the board, whatever its disposition of your application is, I always encourage applicants, listen to your neighbors and be a good neighbor.
Yes.
With what's going on. And that concern, even if you were, fixing watches, I'd tell you to watch where your customers park and where their, cars turn into driveways to turn around.
That was no pun, I take it, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
You said if you're fixing watches, I want you to watch.
No, I didn't mean that. I was just trying to think of something else you might do as a home business with similar skills. Any other questions for the applicant? All right. What's the board's, let's open the floor for some discussion among the board members. What are your thoughts on the...
Oh, Mr. Chairman, do you want to go first?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I will defer to you. Well, Mr. Chairman, what I've written down from listening to all the wonderful people who've spoken, obviously we've talked about the ATF and the police and the guns. I think some of the points that have been made, I think the numbering, and I've been down your area, I have to agree with you, the numbering is absolutely chaotic, and not just their house. I mean, the numbers, most of you, or a lot of you's numbers on mailboxes aren't very clear, which is another one of my... because I have an issue about that anyway. I think then, Pete, you should have people sensing a lighting system on the house that senses as somebody comes to the house, which has been suggested. I know the chairman sort of hivered and havered, but I think that's something you should have, so people can see who's coming to the house and gives you confidence. I know you hesitated about alarms, but I'm afraid I think an alarm is essential. Not necessarily wired to any of the major things, but I think you should have something so if somebody goes in your house that you don't know about, there is a sound system that at least alarms the neighborhood, so somebody's going to ring the police, even if it doesn't ring straight, the system doesn't work and it doesn't go through.
Most of them do automatically now.
But most of them do automatically, but it should also be clear and evident to the neighbors. Those are the things I see. Which would be the absolute minimum requirements I would want to hear and see from you before I could agree to what you're wanting to do.
Yes, sir. There's 4 floodlights on the house, so the yard itself and the parking area are all extremely well lit.
So are they floodlight the whole time, or are they floodlight when somebody comes?
And motion censored?
They're not motion censored.
So they're just on at night?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if the board required that you kept those on during your business hours?
Absolutely. They're normally on at that time
Except
anyways.
in the summertime when it's light outside.
When it gets dark, normally we'll turn them on so the dogs can run around the backyard. Because I put a 6-foot privacy fence in around the backyard, which is also the entrance to where my business would be.
Okay.
So additionally onto the back door, which is deadbolted, and have...
You got to go past your dogs? What kind of dogs you got?
We have a lab mix and an Australian Shepherd. But no, just the fence in general is also kind of a deterrent.
Thank you. Well, you've given me the lighting that I want. And the alarm system?
If the board would see that I need it, I absolutely would have to.
Okay, you got it from me anyway. Mr.
Nelson,
Chairman.
what are your thoughts?
Okay. My thoughts, first of all, is that I just want to emphasize that this is an allowable use in the residential area. A lot of people felt...
Microphone.
I would begin by saying that this is an allowable use under our ordinance in a residential area. A lot of people have objected to it because it is in the residential area, but this is one of the allowable uses for home occupation. I think it's a very small impact on the neighborhood. I think it's a minimal amount of traffic. If we're talking a few cars a week is really not going to be noticed in that neighborhood. There's so many cars there already. I would also point out that Mr. Ryan's house is one of the few houses that has a very clear marking. It says number 10 Burt Street in 10-inch letters. 10-inch letters on the side of the house.
I agree with you.
Yeah, so, to say that if you put floodlights in the yard, I can't see how anybody would miss it, frankly. That's my opinion. So I think that this is an allowable use. I think he's taken a lot of very good safety precautions, and I would say that those be part of his approval, and I would be in favor of approving this. Okay.
Picking up on Alistair, your comments on the alarm system, I would suggest it actually goes to a site, and maybe it even ought to go to the police department. So what I would recommend is an alarm system, and then have them talk to the police department to see what they might want to have, and follow their recommendations.
Well, the police department's already weighed in on the notion of an ATF license approval and all of those kinds of things, and so those guys, they're not even asking for an alarm at all.
I know, that's the whole point. They may say an ADT system is just fine, and that would be okay, but they ought to have an option, especially if we say there has to be an alarm system there.
I don't think it does any harm to have the police weigh in and say whether they'd like that particular approach or system.
Right.
Then do you have any comments or questions? Tom? What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, for the purposes of discussing it, we should make a motion, and I would take it upon myself to make a motion that we approve the request from Mr. Ryan Sartori to have a consideration of a final approval of a home occupation to permit a gunsmithing business at the residence of 20 Burt Street in Merrimack.
Subject to all the conditions.
Subject to all the conditions we've talked about specifically. ATF license, police approval, a gun safe, alarms, insurance, lighting, and good numbering, which we know most of it's been covered, but I want it specified in the piece of paper that you get.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion? Second by Mr. Sebring. Is there any further discussion? I would echo the things that we've discussed here. I know that we've approved these businesses in the past. It is an allowable use. The kinds of concerns that the neighbors have brought up are ones that we hear when each time we've heard one of these in the past, and thankfully we've never heard any of those concerns come to pass. Generally speaking, there's guns in lots and lots and lots of houses, and they don't require anything like the kinds of protections and security that we're going to have this gentleman put into place with respect to the couple of guns that he has for his business. Doesn't mean that it's foolproof, but I think that he's met all the obligations that he's required to meet in order to gain our approval, and so I would vote for it. And that's my 2 cents. If there's no other comments, Nelson?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I'd like just to clarify what you meant by alarm system. How did we end up with, we're going to leave that to the police?
No, we're going to require an alarm system, but the alarm system is one that the police will have some opinion as to whether it's an appropriate one.
Not a Tom, Dick and Harry thing. We want a decent, there are 3 or 4 decent companies, and we'd like the police to weigh in on it.
Well, and they also may want to have a direct link to it, too. Or they may not. That'll be their choice.
That's up to the police.
That's up to them.
Yeah, but it's got to be in police involvement. Approval.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be clear on what it was we were asking for here.
An alarm system subject to the police department's approval.
That's correct.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor of the motion to grant the home of occupation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? That's 6-0-0 to grant the home occupation. So you will get a letter in a couple of days that outline all of those conditions that we've put on you. That letter will, indicate that it's a conditional approval based on you meeting the lighting and the alarms and all of those kinds of things. And with that, when you've met all those conditions, you're ready to go.
Yes, sir. More specifically, I'm curious as to what insurance specifically you guys would request that I get. Would it just be a normal home occupations insurance or workers' comp, something along those lines?
No workers' comp because you don't have any employees. There's a general liability policy that is written under the premises that your insurance company knows that you're going to be operating a gunsmithing business in your home.
So that would go right through your home
Yes.
insurance? Okay.
But they have to know about it.
Yes, sir.
Robert, that's correct, right? Is there anything else that we require of insurance?
I just have a copy of insurance certificate, and that was lifted straight from the previous approval. So I've not dealt with an application like this before, so I don't know what insurance is required, but I can check with Tim and Jillian and get that squared away with them.
Okay. So we've done our best to answer your question, but the department will get some better information, or you
Yes,
can
sir.
get in touch with them and kind of find
Thank
out
you.
some more details for what's needed. Thank you.
Could I also say to the neighbours, I did actually go down to see your site, and I would echo your comments about the traffic. I think somebody ought to go and very nicely talk to the police department about the speed at which the traffic was hurtling around your neighbourhood. I would have thought the risks to your children were far greater from the cars that were going round rather than Mr. Sartori's guns.
So maybe now they will maybe make an extra effort. Start working
Yeah.
on the street patrol.
Well, there you go. For any of you, our police department is very responsive. If you make calls to them and tell them that you got a problem and they should drive through the neighborhood and take a look at traffic or parking or suspicious character or whatever you want to do, they're
They
very
will
responsive.
be there, and they'll watch and see, and then they'll take some action. And it'll be in your best interests. I really tell you that.
I'm a big fan of our police department. I think we got one of the best, so call them.
And of course, they always can have speed bumps put in their neighborhood.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Don't do that.
And I'll tell you why you don't want...
It works.
Well, yes,
Snow plows eat those right up.
There's one drawback to speed bumps. If you put speed bumps in, and I speak as a school bus driver, although not a Merrimack school bus driver, if you put speed bumps in, the kids want the bus driver to go over the speed bumps at speed so they have the fun of bouncing up in the air. Don't put... Anyway.
Fair enough. All right. Item 4 on our agenda is discussion and possible action
Thank you,
regarding
folks.
other items of concern. By email, I think probably a couple of different ways you've gotten a notice that the Economic Development Citizens Advisory Committee has a meeting in early November where they're having a guest speaker on the subject of livable communities. They've communicated that to us as being...
Folks, could you have your meeting outside, because we do have more business to do. Sorry to be rude, but good night.
The EDCAC has suggested that their livable communities presentation goes hand in hand with our Complete Streets meeting that we're going to have in a couple of weeks after that, and they've invited us all to attend. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew about that and had the opportunity to go check it out if you're interested in doing that. I forget which November date it was, Nelson. You
The
know?
9th, the 9th
of November.
Yes.
And obviously, for anybody at home or anybody that's interested that's not on the board, it's an open meeting like all the rest of the town. You can always come and hear it and see it. I don't have any other items of concern to discuss.
They meet in the conference room, a memorial conference room. Yes, in the other building.
The other.
Downstairs and that way.
It's that direction, Nelson.
Okay. Whatever it is.
The other side of City Hall. I thought you're pointing towards the school over
Yes.
here. I'm thinking,
I get turned around here. Okay, it's the Memorial Conference Room is the proper name for it, and it's
in the other wing
building.
of Town Hall.
Okay. The wing of Town Hall. Yes.
Okay. Any other comments on our discussion regarding other items of concern?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. I have one other thing I'd like the board to be aware of, and I think I put out a message on it, but I just say it for the folks at home, that last Thursday, on behalf of the Town Center Committee, I presented an annual report of the Town Center Committee to the Town Council. And I asked the Town Council to consider putting into the Capital Reserve Fund, the Capital and CIP program this year, funding to continue development of sidewalks in the town center area, and they have agreed to do that. So that's a good step forward, I believe, in getting the implementing the ITRAC recommendations from 2009. And so just wanted the board to be aware of that. Tom, anything to add? I wouldn't argue with you, but I thought we agreed to consider it as opposed to agreed to do that. And so, okay. But there's a little semantical difference there.
No, there's a fundamental difference.
Well, I'm glad for that clarification, because I've been expecting it otherwise. But anyway, maybe I just misheard, but I hope not. I mean, I hope so. Hope so. Yeah.
Well,
Moving right
before we
along.
move right along with that, I think that over the last couple of years, the planning board in its support of sidewalks has not been particularly shy about expressing its disagreement with the town council's approach to sidewalks. And I think it's fair to say that after the last couple of sidewalk efforts before the town council, we ought to be a little kinder to them. I think that they've shown that they're open and they're willing to consider some things when they get a project before them or a presentation before them that suits some of the views and the interests that they have. And I hope that we will stop beating them up. They're all right. They're good folks. They're good folks, the town council. Right, Tom?
I certainly would agree with that.
You think they're good folks? We should stop beating them up. Anyway, I can't tell anybody what to do, but I think that if everybody's willing to kind of give them the fresh look, they've been all right. Pretty good on that. So, anyway, other items of concern?
So,
Robert.
in front of you, I'm hoping that you were left an email.
Yeah, you were.
Somewhere amongst your paperwork. The Nashua Regional Planning Commission appointment of Karen Elmer is coming due, and a recommendation needs to be made to the town council for reappointment. She is seeking that. Elmer?
Yeah.
Karen Elmer, K-A-R-I-N-E-L-M-E-R. Karen has been a member of the National Regional Planning Commission for as long as I can remember. It seems like from times we've
Quite a
appointed
number
and
of
reappointed.
years, yes, at least 5 or 6.
Tom, you're also in that group, aren't you? Do you know?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore. I think that.
Do you need a motion or just a consensus?
This is a recommendation to the town council, so a motion would be beneficial.
And also move.
And I will second the motion to recommend that she be reappointed.
There's a motion and a second to reappoint Karen Elmer or to recommend the reappointment of Karen
Yeah.
Elmer to the town council. She's appointed to the National Regional Planning Commission. The recommendation is to the town council. Keep that in mind, to reappoint. Without further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I'll abstain.
5-0-1 with 1 abstaining. Councilor Koenig. With that, are there any other items of concern for discussion? Seeing none, that brings us to the approval of the minutes of September 20th, 2016. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion we approve the minutes of October the 4th, 2016, subject to a few changes or amendments that I would be prepared to highlight to you. On page 1, I'm not being fussy about it, but strictly I'm now the vice chairman, but not the secretary.
Oh, that's true. We did change that. Where is that written?
Did you?
And on the bottom of that page, starting at line 58, if you read it, it's very difficult to read and make sense. What I would like it to say is, Mr. Ken Clinton remarked on Director Thompson's comments and his memo dated September 29th, 2016, semicolon. He believed, and then the rest of it's okay.
So you want to change per to on?
Per to on, and then put a semicolon
after
after the 16 and then say he believed. It's not it is believed, he believed. On page 2, line 26, 27, I think it would be better if it said Mr. Milne stated his awareness that, as Director Thompson stated. And I think on page 3 I had one other little comment. And that is just on line 6, within is one word, not 2 words. It's within. I think it should be within.
I don't think that's the meaning that he meant.
Oh.
He's dealing, the same problem he was dealing with, comma,
Oh, I
in the
see.
plan.
I'll withdraw.
comment, not a.
Well, in that case, put a comment between. Okay. I'll pass on that then, Mr. Chairman. Otherwise, you have my recommendation. We approve the minutes.
Second by Lynn Christensen. Any other discussion or comments on the minutes? All in favor of approval of the minutes of October 4th, 2016, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 6-0-0 to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion? Jeff seconds the motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 6-0-0. We're adjourned. Don't forget to turn your microphone off, and thank you, everybody.